What's going on, fellow tent pros? Welcome to the Pitching Tents podcast, brought to you by Top Tech Event Tents with your host, Brian Bolt.
And Davis West.
What's going on, Davis? How are things?
Glad to be back from ARA. I'm still worn out.
I think that was my number 20th in a row. I had 1 year off in the mix, but that's the one thing I think everybody says coming off of ARA is physically demanding, especially those of us on the associate member side.
It was a little different this year, too, because we had the ARA show towards the end of the week.
Yeah. So, good thing it was a month early, too, though. Maybe we get I'm going to need that extra month to recover physically.
Starting out on Monday of last week and go until, heck, I didn't get back to the house till 12:30 Sunday night. So, full 7 days.
Same. Yeah.
But good show.
Yeah, it was well attended. I think everybody was pleasantly surprised. A lot of energy, and the people that we talked to, or the customers that we talked to, were glad to be there, of course. And everybody loves going to Vegas for a kind of a long weekend. In our case, a whole week.
Well, that's right. So let's just jump right into this podcast and who we are and what we're doing, and then we'll swing back to ARA and give our final thoughts. And
Sure. This is the inaugural episode of, the name of the podcast is Pitching Tents, and we're going to be talking about a lot of things and coming at it from a manufacturer's perspective and really concentrating a lot on education, right?
Yep.
And the big purpose, I would say, let's just put it right up front, the big purpose of the podcast is to bring that education. Top Tech's become known for its tent school that we've done for
how many years running?
24 consecutive years that we've done our tent school, excuse me.
Whether it be here or all on the road.
We've done it, and I think the first time we took it on the road was about 2017, and we've had multiple hosts on the road over the years. And I think next year the general consensus is we're going to be bringing it back to here in Moore, South Carolina. But anyway, we wanted to share some things that we've learned over the years and provide a place that we can share these topics that people want to know, and they're thirsty to know some of these things. There's a big movement afoot in the industry about safety. We're going to really start the next episode that we do, the first one after this inaugural episode that we're going to do. We're really going to concentrate on safety as a foundation for everything that we do, and specifically how to create a culture of safety within your organization. And then so the bottom line is we're going to be talking about the educational content that's relative and relevant to what we do. And we're also going to bring in some guests. We've already got guests lined up. We've got, a solid 6 months worth of content already laid out, ready to go.
Yep.
So we want to bring those. We've got some people, like I said, on call to be in here with us. And I think
lined up already.
We do, and I think there could be some popular names that people are will be interested to hear from them as industry experts. Then we're going to talk about some real world scenarios. Obviously, you and I look at this stuff. We're going to come at it from a manufacturer's perspective and give some thoughts on from the way that we look at it. But then we're also going to have some of the rental industry experts and people who are operators that are dealing with, the content that everybody struggles with every day, and put some real world feel in terms of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. And we're looking to do that, like every 2 weeks, dropping a podcast?
Yeah, right now. We'll see. If we feel like we need to speed that up, we'll certainly do that. Like I said, we've got a good bit of content already laid out that we want to talk about. Like I said, the first thing we're gonna do when the next episode, we're really going to touch on safety. I'll just go ahead and say that now, because that is our foundation. And again, when we do our tent school, that's day one. Before we ever start anything as a group, we all get together and talk about safety, because we've certainly seen it with some of the industry associations. It's been a big movement afoot, certainly in my time in this business, that people are starting to truly embrace working safely, which is good, because, when we always say when somebody does something that compromises safety, it usually doesn't just affect them, it affects all of us, because we're in it together.
Yep, that's right. And podcast in today's world, it's how people are getting their information. I mean, they crave the information. They get in their car, they throw a podcast on. I know that's all I do.
Yeah.
So be a great way for us to just having a little extra touch with our customers and end users in the industry.
Well, the other thing too is we want to make sure that we don't. I always say too, when we start talking about educating people, a lot of times those of us like you and I that have been doing this a long time, we think we're starting from ground zero, and we end up leaving a lot of people behind, and we don't want to do that.
Well, we get that at Tent School. Even when we try to bring it down to the most basic that we feel like we can bring it to, even at the end in the reviews, we always get. We would love to hear a little bit more on the smaller tents. Everybody always just assumes we should already know this, and I'm guilty of it. I mean, I just assume, hey, a 10 by 10, everybody knows how to put it up, but that's not necessarily the case.
All of us had to learn somewhere.
That's right.
And if you're not willing to learn as you get older, and even learn some more of the basic, what we would say almost remedial type stuff, if you're not willing to even embrace and learn that as a veteran, then I think you're really backing up. So we're going to talk about the basics. And when I'm talking about basics, what's the difference between a frame tent and a pole tent? I'm talking...
What's their applications?
Yeah, because there's a lot of times that people skip over that because they don't realize, hey, there's a reason why I might want to have pole tents. And, these days, everybody goes, well, there's, frame tents so much more versatile. Not necessarily. Let's talk about the differences in frames and poles and physically what they are. And then we'll also get into not just the difference mechanically in what those things are, but where do they fit within your business?
Right. I mean, they are aesthetically different, but they also have different practicalities and uses.
Yep. And then we're going to talk about the pole tents. We're going to go from, talking about the differences in frames and poles. Then let's dive specifically into pole tents. And let's talk basic pole tents, how you lay out a pole tent, how why you would want to use a pole tent in a certain application versus a frame tent. Then we're going to do the same thing on frame tents. We're going to talk about basic frame tents and talk about what's the most basic frame style, which is a lot of people just, would refer to, say, like a West Coast frame tent.
Right.
What is that? What does it look like? How does that differ from some others?
How does that transition into Keter?
Yeah, right. And then ultimately, how do you know when it's time to go from that type of tent into a Keter frame? And
Brian, it's always time to go from West Coast to Keter.
I knew that was coming. So then we'll talk about, we'll get into pole tent installation and how we want to install a pole tent and the way that we train on that. And not to say that our way of doing it is absolute, but we've learned over time a right and a wrong way to do it based on the products that we sell. And a lot of pole tents are the same across the board in terms of how they go together and how they are constructed. But we'll talk about those, and we'll have special guests on for those that content as well.
Yeah, I mean, even as a manufacturer, still to this day, going to tent school, we talk about it on our way home every year. So-and-so taught me a different way to do this, and it actually works better than how we're doing it.
Well, like I'm telling you, I always tell our customers when I'm doing a training session in the field, and I say, half of what I learned or more is from watching y'all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot I filter out, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But there's a ton that I've learned, better ways of doing things by being willing to watch how our customers do things. And I always say, if it doesn't affect your safety or the integrity of the product, I don't care how you do it. Yeah. If it doesn't affect safety, or when I say the integrity of the product, if you're not going to do damage to the equipment by the way you do it, sometimes there are absolutes in the way you do it. But outside of that, you got to figure out the best way for your operation.
That's right. So going back to real world situations, we're going to be bringing in guests. Do we want to drop any names?
No, not yet. I'm not ready for that.
All right.
I don't think they are either.
I mean, the lineup we've got is kind of impressive.
Yep. And I'm just going to go through kind of some of the content we're talking about bringing on. And we're also going to talk about frame tent applications. Let's talk about your clear vinyl. That's a hot topic.
Yep.
Always about, what's the deal with clear? Clear's a different animal, right?
Right.
We'll get into it. And
you got to treat it different.
Yep. Then we're going to talk about Keter tent specifically, which Top Tech's become known for, in addition to our bulletproof, I would say, pole tents tension tents that we manufacture as well, but we've really become known for providing a premier Keter product as an answer for Keter. Some people say hybrid or Keter frame tent, which we know is our feature track and feature light.
That's right. That's that gateway into West Coast frame.
That's right. And then we'll talk about how the system that we have, how it correlates to, and it's based in a West Coast frame background, and we'll get into all that. We're also going to talk about, we're going to dive deep into anchoring too, which has obviously been a hot topic for years, and more people want to ballast, but we're going to talk about staking too. Still, there's no more efficient way to anchor a tent still than staking, and we're going to talk about that. We'll probably spend a couple different episodes getting into the guts.
Staking study and everything like that. And that goes back to the use of a tent too.
Yep.
Because pole tent, you can only stake.
Yep.
Yep.
And that's again, we want to touch on these hot topics, and these are things that have been discussed for a long time, but I think through this platform we'll give people a common place to listen to why you do things the way that you do them, right? And again, touching on it from the manufacturer side. We're also going to talk about valance styles and what's the differences in specific valances. People look at valances, which is just a portion of the tent that hangs on the outside above or at the perimeter. Well, there's a functional reason of doing those different valance styles. And here at TopTech, I know we provide, or we manufacture multiple valance styles, especially in different frame tents. We're going to get into the pros and cons, ins and outs of all that kind of stuff. Then we're going to also talk about engineering. Engineering is another one that people want us to explain why engineering. And I've spent countless phone calls with, engineers and then ultimately fire marshals and building inspectors trying to interpret what the output, what we give our customers, and our customers take an engineered drawing. And then, so let's talk about what those drawings mean and help people understand what we're talking about there.
And talking about, what that engineering consists of too, because once you give somebody engineering, just because you have a tent with engineering document, once it goes up a level,
once it comes off the ground, the wind load comes down. You've got to use all the parts. That's another thing. Is like you can't leave parts out of a tent and expect it to still be certified.
And even site-specific engineering for some tents.
We can do that too, and we've done quite a bit of that over time. And then that's ultimately also going to tie into codes and permitting. We got a special guest already lined up there too, and we're going to talk about codes and permitting and kind of how all that means and what that looks like across the industry.
About to say that differs state to state too.
You can go 10 miles down the road and have to play by different rules.
I'm telling you.
So I think that's the long and short of kind of the content that we got coming up to you. So I think it'd be a good time too. Let's just talk, since this is an inaugural podcast. Let's let them know a little bit about their hosts and who we are. Davis, you go first. Tell us more about your background, where you came from, and how you fit into the whole tent industry.
Got it right. So like I said, my name's Davis West. I've now been here with TopTech this is going on my 6th year.
Mm-hmm.
So before I was with TopTech, I worked for a local company called Event Rentals. They started out as a local farm cattle auction company.
Mm-hmm.
Bought their first tent way on back when just to have cattle auctions underneath and equipment auctions.
Yep.
And it grew into the community wanting to rent that one tent they had.
I remember Russell telling me, he said, you can only tell people no so many times when they asked to rent that tent before you had to figure out how to say yes.
That's right. So fast forward, they ended up buying a few more tents from us.
Yeah.
And now have 4 locations and are just booming.
Yeah.
So worked for them since my 10th grade summer all the way until 2 years out of college. So I was slinging tents for a long time. Briefly left the industry to go take a office job just because I had gotten my degree.
Yep.
And I remember calling Will back, who was my boss at Event Rentals, said, "Hey man, I miss tents. I guess I'm just a tent guy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think TopTech might be looking for somebody right now?" Lo and behold, y'all were.
Right.
And I can remember I did my phone interview with you.
Yep.
I was on the Bush Hog.
Yep. I was in
my
Florida.
Old company doing my phone interview.
That's right.
And here we are 6 years later.
Yep.
So I've been in the tent industry now for probably about 15 years.
Yep.
Close to.
Yep.
Seen both sides of it. So I kind of have a different viewpoint than you have. You come just straight from manufacturer side. I had some time in the field. So that definitely helped with my transition here.
That's
for
right.
Sure.
Yep.
Now I'm able to serve on the Matra board, which I'm glad to do. And that'll tie in too, because, we can run some safety stuff through them.
Absolutely. Yep.
But that's
good.
Briefly me.
Yeah.
If I'm not here, Brian knows what I'm doing. We're hunting somewhere. Hunting or playing golf.
Right. Yep. And I'm Brian Bolt. Been fortunate to meet so many people in this industry I've been doing this.
Like everybody already knows who Brian Bolt is, but go ahead.
No, come on. So I started in 2004, and that's this year will be 21 years in this industry. And Top Tech was a customer of mine. I was in the fastener business before, and Top Tech was, like I said, a customer. And I was selling the detent pins, bolts, screws, all that kind of stuff. And it was just we were dealing with OEM fasteners, and Top Tech just happened to be a customer. And Andy Whitlow, who was our general manager at the time, said, "You ever thought about doing something else?" It's like, nah. Well, what you got? You know. And then we started talking, and they were looking for somebody to really help on the sales and service side. So I jumped in with both feet, and that was coming up on 21 years ago.
No, you can't get away from it.
No, so it gets in your blood for sure. And I always tell people, I was having this conversation last week, that a lot of my best personal friends in life now are customers of ours. And they started out as customers, and then I'm lucky to have a lot of friends in general. And then a lot of my very close personal friends, I mean, we travel to go be with these friends, outside of work. And it's just, my wife, knows their wives and kids, and it becomes who you are. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, for sure.
I mean, I got Jeff Holloway over here that takes me a devotional every single morning.
That's great.
It's the best friends you can make in this industry.
Absolutely right. Yep. So let's go again, a real quick cap of, we'll kind of recap Vegas real quick one more time and get in, we said it was a good show.
It was a great
feedback
show
that I had from other people, it was a good show.
I mean, typically our Vegas show tends to be on the low end of foot traffic through the booth, but this one seemed to be right up there, close with Orlando and New Orleans.
Right. And, show opened on Thursday morning, which was really, like I said, that was my 20th show and the first one I've ever done on the end of a week. It's always been Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, right?
That's right.
So
do we want to just go back and talk about when this show was supposed to air?
No.
I think we got to tell the story.
You kind of, go ahead. You just started.
So we were going to do the inaugural podcast at ARA on the show floor the morning before the first day, which what better way to kick off a tent podcast? I mean, this is the biggest show we have all year, and this is going to be the biggest tent podcast
and we've planned
online. So
we have planned this podcast for months and literally said, let's kick it off at ARA.
So what was it? Was it Monday or Tuesday night when we were out to dinner?
Tuesday night.
We were out to dinner. We start talking about the podcast, and about 2 seconds after Brian said something about the podcast, we both lock eyes and we're like, had that, shiitake mushroom look on our face. Because we had put the podcast equipment back in one of the crate
Everybody
boxes
knows what
packed it back on up and said,
those of you who may be listening that know how hectic ARA install is. Yeah, we took part of the equipment took the equipment with us and promptly packed it away and sent it back with Freeman.
That's
and so we had to wait till after the show to do our inaugural. But anyway.
No, my brain was fried from getting electrocuted. So,
yeah.
Let's talk about our tent.
Davis, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Tell the story.
No,
that was hilarious.
Davis decided he would stick his finger into a open light bulb socket just because he didn't have anything better to do. And then
was grounded to the tent, too.
Yeah, he was holding the tent and sticking his finger in the light socket. So
quick wake-up call.
Yeah, but no, so those of you who came by the booth, thank you. And you probably saw we had a 20 by 30 booth space, and we did a 15 by 15 monoslope, which was a hot topic. We did it in a hammer toe and powder coated frame with black and clear tops, right? Black trim, clear tops. And that's been all the rage. It's been a successful product for us, what we call our Eclipse line, which is typically some sort of a dark powder coat. It doesn't necessarily have to be black, as we showed with the hammer tone stuff, but
a lot of people asked about that tent as well and what its uses was, and we were talking about outdoor dining. It fits flush up against a wall,
right? And
you can outdoor patio seating underneath it. Those of you who saw the tent as well, it's pretty tall because the pitch is the 26.5 degree, which is our standard pitch on our Future Track.
Correct.
But you can minimize that pitch if you need to for an application.
I don't know how many times during the show I showed people that, typically those things end up becoming custom because 100%. Of the site parameters will dictate what that ultimate overall height can be, and people want to tuck it under an overhanging roof line.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever sold one of those that was just the standard.
I've got
edge.
one to quote this after. I got one to quote this afternoon. Quoted one yesterday, and custom everything about it,
even the pitch.
Yeah. So
yeah.
And it's just, but we can do that. And we're not scared of custom work. And I will say this podcast is not intended to be a commercial for Top Tech, but we will talk about the things that we do. That's the idea. The biggest focus for this podcast will be education.
That's right.
For the tinning professional.
Education and safety coming from the guy who electrocuted himself. Hey, all right. It's all right. Everybody has to learn to stay smart.
It takes a village. All right. So what's going to be the next episode, Davis?
You got the list?
Yeah, I do. The next episode is actually going to be on safety, and we are going to create a foundation. We want to talk about how to create a foundation of safety and create a culture of safety within your workforce.
And talk about that. We need to create a checklist for your guys when they get in the truck and leave every day. The items to keep them safe on the job need to be in that truck, and we're going to go over that.
Yep. So we're going to do that. That next podcast will come out in a couple of weeks, and until then, we'll see you soon.
That's right. Everybody, have a good day. Wear your hard hat. Stay safe.